And finally, in 2014, a ROM hack, the leaked prototype, was released that reintroduced all these Superman elements. Yeah, it was forced to remove. Superman owned by Marvel. During the 1980s, DC Comics was going through some serious financial issues. And in 1984, during discussions on what to do about these problems, DC management began considering selling Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, the Justice League, Teen Titans, and the Legion of Superheroes to Marvel Comics. This idea was given so much thought that John Bryan wrote a script and drew a cover for Superman, the first Marvel issue, the first installment of Superman's time under Marvel. This idea was scrapped, however, as Marvel was hit with an antitrust lawsuit, which caused Marvel to get cold feet about the whole deal. As for this cancelled issue, the script itself hasn't leaked online, but Jim Shooter has written a description of what the script story was. It was basically just a retelling of the Superman origin story, with Lex Luthor showing up in the final panel. As for the cover art, it sadly never surfaced. Power Girl's diet soda addiction. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Power Girl joined Justice League Europe and had many different adventures with them. However, during the course of her career with them, her behavior got more and more aggressive. And so, Dr. Light did some research and found out that the reason why Power Girl is so aggressive isn't because she herself is aggressive. No. It's the diet soda she's drinking. How did she become addicted to diet soda? Well, she merely started drinking it to lose weight, to live up to the ideal female body created by men. When she's confronted about the issue, she vows to quit drinking diet soda. And so, the world quickly forgot about Power Girl's diet soda addiction. Superman, George Washington, General Custer, and Abraham Lincoln go to the 24th century. In Action Comics issue 399, released in April of 1971, Superman gets plucked at a time and sent off to the 24th century. Why was he taken to the future? Well, for history class. When Superman wakes up, he's met with George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and General George Custer. He's then told by scientists that he was killed in the 20th century by a space energy manta ray vampire. Comics are wild. Superman's just like, no, I wasn't. What are you talking about? He's then told that scientists on Earth then created two different clones of him in order to continue the Superman legacy. After the first clone died, the people of the future made a second one. And then they try to gaslight Superman into thinking that he's the second clone, who also died and had been teleported to the future to prevent his death. However, when this clone died, he saved the Earth. And so Superman, now believing that he is the second clone, returns to the 20th century to await the day he must sacrifice his life for the Earth. Except when he does return to his time and does do the mission that results in his supposed death, he doesn't actually die. He then realizes that the future he was taken to was the future of an alternate universe Earth. So he's just fine and not actually a clone. Also in this universe, Abraham Lincoln was elected president for life, George Washington freed the slaves, and George Custer is the chief of the Native American Federation. Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex. Written in 1969, Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex is an essay written by Larry Niven about how he thinks that Superman wouldn't be able to bang and have kids with human women. He argues that the genetic DNA of Superman's stuff would cause serious harm to any human woman. Also, according to Larry, if Superman is able to get Lois Lane pregnant, when the Kryptonian baby hybrid kicks, it would annihilate Lois. It's a very weird essay that concludes that the best way for Superman to have a kid on Earth is for a fetus to be implanted in his abdomen and born through a C-section. I hate this. I have no idea if I can link this, so I'm not taking the risk. If you want to find it, it's not hard. And I guess neither is Superman. Alright, that's it. That's the end of the Superman Iceberg. That's 3 hours and, I think, 26 minutes. insane. It's, I knew it was going to be this long going into it. I knew it was going to be around this length. Um, yeah, really, I would just say, outside of please share this around, give it a like, comment, etc. Subscribe if you like the content. There's gonna be a lot more iceberg stuff in the next year. I don't normally ask those things, but this was a really big project, so I figured I'd ask. But I mean, it's the end of the video, so like two people are gonna see this. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I certainly enjoyed making it. I learned a whole hell of a lot about Superman stuff. I have come out of this with a newfound respect. Well, I already have respect for the character, but like I have a new interest in Superman. What I'm trying to say here is that I'll probably check out some more of his comics and stuff like that. I actually purchased the big ominous whatever the big collection of the Death and Return of Superman story arc. It's like 1,015 like it's like 1,500 pages. Bought that recently. I'm gonna read that soon. I just this iceberg, it made me interested in the character, and I hope it made you interested in the character. In case you weren't super big into Superman. Not much else to say. Have a good one. Have a great Christmas, a great Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever holiday you celebrate. A great holiday. And trust me, there's going to be a lot of content next year. There's going to be a whole heck of a lot of stuff. So stay tuned for that. Really stretching at the length here, so I'll wrap it up. Have a good one. Stay safe. See you next year. We all hung out in the coffee shop cleaning poopies. Welcome back, guys, to another iceberg. Now, I put out a poll about 2 or 3 months ago, depending on when this video comes out, where I listed off various superhero iceberg topics, and I let you guys choose which I tackled first. And Iron Man won in the end. So, here we are. Flash, Wonder Woman, Hulk, and even the X-Men will all be done eventually. You just gotta be patient. So anyways, before I begin the video, I need to mention two more things. The first is that this iceberg is going to tackle topics not just about Iron Man, but characters relating to Iron Man, like War Machine, Hyperpods, Ironheart, Mandarin, etc. Also, I did an MCU iceberg almost 2 years ago, and there's some topics about Iron Man that I covered in that iceberg. I also mentioned some topics related to Iron Man in both the Spider-Man icebergs and even the first Transformers iceberg. So if you're wondering why these topics aren't in the video, it's because I already talked about them in those videos. So go check out those videos if you want to hear me talk about them. They're pretty good. I'm not biased. With all that being said, let's get started. The Hulkbuster armor. As the name suggests, this armor was created by Tony Stark to battle Hulk in case he got a little bit too angry, and for fighting enemies who were as strong as the Hulk. First appearing in Iron Man issue 304, released in March 1994, in this story, Tony would put on the Hulkbuster armor to battle the Hulk when Hulk shows up to a power plant to investigate the Pentagon creating gamma bombs. And surprisingly, there's no winner in this fight. It ends with the two of them talking things out. Though this would be the last time Tony would face off against the Hulk, not by a long shot. Since then, Tony's built several different Hulkbuster armors, all of them having enhanced strength and resistance to physical attacks. Though some of these have unique abilities, like there's an armor that has missiles filled with adamantium nanoparticles, there's one that has the ability to inject anti-gamma radiation nanites, and there's one that turns into a car, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Probably the most iconic Hulkbuster armor was the one featured in the World War Hulk storyline. This armor, known as Model 36, was used by Tony to battle Hulk at probably his strongest, and he lost. Hulk won. The Hulkbuster has appeared in several different media, such as Avengers Assemble, Iron Man Armored Adventures, and Avengers Square Enix. Which, fun fact, if you summon the Hulkbuster and don't get in it, other Avengers like Black Widow can hop in it. A neat little detail in a overall mediocre game, I think. I don't know. I own the game, but I haven't touched it yet. The Hulkbuster armor has also showed up in the MCU, in Age of Ultron, Infinity War, and Endgame. Also, the Incredible Hulk video game, where there's like a million of them for some reason. Iron Man Armored Adventures. Releasing from April 2009 to July 2012, Iron Man Armored Adventures was an animated series airing on Nicktoons. It was created to ride off the success of the first Iron Man film, and is about a much younger Tony Stark, and by extension, a much younger Pepper Potts and Rhodey, saving the world from a variety of different villains, such as Ironmonger, Crimson Dynamo, Madame Mask, Living Laser, the Mandarin, Whiplash, MODOK, etc. But because he's so young, 16, he's got to balance his time between being Iron Man and being a normal teenager in high school. Yeah, it's kind of like a Spider-Man thing, but with Iron Man. While focused on Iron Man, he wasn't the only hero to show up in the series, as eventually Rhodey would become War Machine, and Pepper would become Rescue. Also, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Hulk, Professor X, Jean Grey, Black Panther, and Nick Fury would all make guest appearances throughout the show. Even non-Iron Man villains, like Magneto and Doctor Doom, show up at some points. While this show isn't as popular as other superhero shows at the time, like Spectacular Spider-Man or Avengers or Earth's Mightiest Heroes, it still has a cult following to this day. Demon in a Bottle. This is easily the most famous Iron Man storyline out there. Starting in Iron Man issue 120, released in December of 1978, and ending in Iron Man issue 128, released in August of 1979, this story saw Tony battle alcoholism. He had always been a drinker, but it wasn't until he accidentally killed a foreign ambassador due to a suit malfunction that he started to drink a lot. Well, besides that time, Tony had literally quit being Iron Man because of his drinking problem, and Rhodey took over the mantle for about 2 years. Anyways, though it wasn't actually a suit malfunction, it turns out that it was actually Justin Hammer and his scientists who had messed with Tony's suit to cause his armor to malfunction and kill the ambassador. Even after discovering the truth and defeating Hammer, Tony continues to drink and drink and drink until eventually his girlfriend at the time, Bethany Cabe, gets through to him and gets him to admit that he has a problem and needs help. Tony stops drinking and the story ends. A lot of people believe that this story was created as a PSA of sorts about alcohol, but in actuality, that wasn't the case. Writer and artist Bob Layden said, quote, I'm going to quote David Michelini here, that it was never our intent to do anything relevant. We were paid to basically do the next episode of Iron Man. It's just that in that particular issue, alcoholism was the bad guy, instead of Doctor Doom or somebody like that. It was the bottle. That was our villain of the month. And that's really the way we treated it. We built everything up to that. But the point of it is, it was never, we never attempted to be relevant. It just, in the corporate world, what gets the guys? What causes the downfall? Usually it's greed or it's sex and drugs, right? Well, we couldn't do the sex part, right? Alcohol wasn't talked about all that much, really, to be honest with you. Especially with kids, in that particular era. But we treated it as we intended to, as the bad guy. Because of its serious tone about real-world issues, this story, despite being the most famous Iron Man story, hasn't, and probably will never, be properly adapted in a show, movie, or video game. Though in Iron Man 2, the scene where Tony's drunk and he briefly fights Rhodey was actually confirmed by director Jon Favreau to be a very, very loose nod to the storyline. Igor confusion. Before the release of Iron Man 3, fans were pretty hyped to see what looked to be the Hulkbuster armor in the trailer for the film. It looked a little bit different from your standard Hulkbuster armor, but it had to be a Hulkbuster. I mean, look at it. Well, as we know now, this wasn't a Hulkbuster armor, but instead the Igor armor, aka the Mark 38. Tony created it in universe with the purpose of it being to lift heavy objects during rescue missions. While the Igor armor isn't a Hulkbuster, concept art for the Igor armor does have the classic yellow and red Hulkbuster colors. So there was a point in production where this suit was going to be a reference to the Buster. Deleted scenes. So I've already covered a lot of the MCU deleted scenes in the MCU iceberg. So if you want to see me mention more deleted scenes, go check out that video. Here are the scenes I covered in that video that relate to Iron Man. I'm not going to be talking about them here. So anyways, here are some deleted scenes from the MCU that relates to Iron Man or War Machine. In the first Iron Man film, a scene where Tony and Ho Yinsen play a board game was cut. They had been interrupted by a member of the Ten Rings who wants to know when his laundry will be done. He actually bonds with the two for a little bit, but then Raza walks in and kills him for being kinda nice to him. A scene in which Rhodey smashes a car into Ironmonger was also cut. And finally, a scene where Tony bails on having a three-way in Dubai was cut. He'd fly off in his Mark II armor, and Pepper would find him later having a drink. In Iron Man 2, an alternate version of Howard Stark's message was filmed, where he'd be seen holding Tony as a kid. And most famously, the beginning of the movie was completely changed. As originally, Tony would be shown vomiting due to, him dying from the film. Pepper then kisses his Iron Man helmet, throws the helmets off the plane they're in, and Tony jumps out the plane after the helmets. In the Avengers, during the Battle of New York, the other contacts Loki, and he tells Loki to use his scepter to control the Chitauri. Loki then realizes that he left the scepter in Stark Tower. This is the only deleted scene in the movie that I can find that somehow relates to Tony Stark. In Iron Man 3, a scene where Trevor talks on the phone about the Chinese theater bombing was cut. There was also a scene in which Rhodey orders a team of analysts to investigate the attack on Tony's mansion. A government agent would then tell him that the Iron Patriot's armor is almost ready, and that he's sorry for Tony's death. But Rhodey assures the agent that he believes that Tony is alive. In Age of Ultron, a scene in which War Machine contacts Tony and Black Widow about Ultron hacking into a nuclear weapons program is cut. It would then be revealed that after the party sequence, Rhodey would be deployed into the Middle East, which explains why he wasn't in most of the movie. In Captain America Civil War, it was going to be revealed that Pepper Potts was pregnant, as Tony was going to mention it to Steve. In Spider-Man Homecoming, a scene in which Happy Hogan is forced to end a call with his mom, and then call up Tony due to the Vulture hijack of the Stark cargo plane was cut. In Avengers Infinity War, a scene in which Tony and Pepper discuss having a kid and their upcoming wedding was cut. Happy Hogan would then show up and chase off a paparazzi member. In Avengers Endgame, a scene in which Pepper tells Tony that their pet alpaca named Gerald ate all their berries was cut. There was also a scene that was cut that involved Howard Stark offering the time-traveling Tony a job. After Tony sacrifices his life, all of the Avengers, Guardians, etc. take a knee to respect him, which personally I think is a very silly scene. There would also be a scene in which Tony would meet his daughter, all grown up in the Soul World, after sacrificing his life. And finally, a scene in which Tony shaves a bit of fur off Rocket Raccoon's cut. Iron Man's armor fell in love with him. This is easily the most famous, weird Iron Man storyline. In Iron Man issue 26, released in February 2000, during a battle with Whiplash, his electric whips combined with the lightning from a thunderstorm somehow gave the Iron Man armor Tony was wearing sentience, so the armor came to life. Tony was naturally pretty spooked by this, but the two actually got along just fine. Until the armor confessed that it had fallen in love with Tony, and also then murdered Whiplash. All of this caused Tony to be understandably concerned, and so he brought the armor to Whiplash's funeral in order to teach the armor about morality. But instead of learning morality, the armor was just like, bring me back to base so I can recharge before I kill everyone at this funeral. Shortly after this, the armor kidnapped Tony and brought him to a deserted island and demanded that Tony become one with it. Tony refused to become one with the armor, and so it tortured him for a week on the island. The two would eventually fight, where it would be revealed that the armor had created a body for itself inside the suit, and then the suit revealed that its ultimate goal was to replace Tony. Because Tony wasn't wearing an Iron Man armor, the armor obviously won the fight. And just as it's about to kill Tony, Tony started having a heart attack. And so the armor asked Tony one more time to become one with it so he could save Tony's life. But he refused. This somehow gave the armor a change of heart, as it tore out its own heart and placed it into Tony, saving him at the cost of its own life. Rescue? While first appearing in Tales of Suspense, issue 45, released in June 1963, it took until Invincible Iron Man, issue 10, in February 2009, for Pepper to become a superhero. It turns out that Tony had created armor for her in secret. She eventually used this armor to escape the police when Norman Osborn issued an arrest warrant for her and Tony. And after using this suit to escape, she would give herself the superhero name, Rescue, and would eventually start doing superhero missions, saving people whenever Tony was unavailable. Though she wasn't a permanent superhero, she would only do this superhero stuff on the side. Unlike other Iron Man and War Machine-style suits, Pepper's rescue armor has no offensive weapons, so no guns or pulsar weaponry. Instead, she has non-lethal sonic attacks. But like with the Iron Man and War Machine armors, the rescue armor has evolved over the years. And as of right now, there's been 5 different variants. The Mark I, the Mark II, the Mark III, the Mark IV, and finally the Mark V. While Pepper Potts has appeared in various pieces of media, like 7 different MCU films, her rescue armor has appeared in a lot less stuff. Notably Avengers Endgame, Lego Marvel Superheroes, Iron Man Armored Adventures, and Marvel Strike Force. There was also a nod to it in Iron Man 3, but it wasn't actually the rescue armor. Superior Iron Man. A lot of people call Tony Stark a bad person. And while, yeah, he's done some pretty questionable things throughout his existence, his most infamous act, or I guess series of acts, was when he became the Superior Iron Man. This all started after the event storyline, Avengers and X-Men Axis, as in that storyline, a good chunk of Earth's heroes and villains got their moralities reversed. So the spell was undone at the end of the event, and everyone went back to their normal moralities. Except for Tony. As while evil, he had created a way to shield himself from the spell, and so continued to be evil. After becoming the Superior Iron Man, Tony purchased Alcatraz Island, and built an extremely ugly tower on it. He then went on to poison the people of San Francisco with the Extremis 3.0 virus via the city's water supply. And the virus would be activated by an app that he had downloaded on everybody's phones. This was a techno-virus that turned people into their ideal versions of themselves, and so people became addicted to it. So addicted that Tony could eventually force players to pay $100 a day just to use it. Also, while Superior Iron Man, he changed up his armor to one made out of liquid metal that had a symbiotic relationship with him. No, it's not like a Venom symbiote, it's different. He also created his own drone security force that watched over everyone's activity in order to prevent crimes. Eventually, Superior Iron Man would team up with the Earth's heroes in order to prevent an incursion from destroying their world. Though when their efforts failed, Iron Man and Captain America battled to the death as the universe around them ended. But then the universe was brought back and Tony was alive again. He was also a good guy again. It just didn't explain why he was a good guy now. The Superior Iron Man still was done, I guess. The Superior Iron Man armor has appeared in various video games as a cosmetic item, such as Lego Marvel Superheroes and Avengers Square Enix. The Thor Buster armor. While everybody knows about the Hulk Buster, less people know about Tony's other Buster armors. I'll talk about the rest of them later, but for right now, I want to talk about the Thor Buster armor. Also known as the Model 22, the Thor Buster armor first appeared in Iron Man issue 64, released in January 2003, and as the name suggests, is an armor created to battle Thor. Why did Tony have to fight Thor? Well, in the country of Sokovia, a religion based around Thor was created. But shortly after this religion was formed, the Slakovian army then murdered a bunch of the Thor worshippers. This really ticked off Asgard, and so Thor and a bunch of Asgardians stormed into the country. Tony was then asked by the US government to go and talk down Thor before the United Nations steps in. Tony agreed, but Thor refused to listen. So Tony created the Thor Buster armor, which was powered by an Asgardian crystal given to Tony by Thor to create clean energy with. The two fought for a little bit, but Thor would eventually win. Luckily for Tony, Captain America stepped in and tried to talk Thor down. After smashing Cap's shield, Thor then realized that he was fighting his friends, not Sokovia, and so he and the Asgardians left the country. And since then, the Thor Buster armor has never appeared outside of brief background cameos, though it would appear in two different animated series: Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and Marvel's Avengers Assemble. Tony Stark fakes his death. Have you ever faked your own death? I hope you said no. Anyways, Tony Stark's faked his death before. This happened in Iron Man issue 284, released in July 1992, which is also the first appearance of the War Machine armor. In this story, Tony was shot in the spine, which meant that he couldn't walk anymore, so he placed some tech in his back to fix his spine. But then the tech began to slowly kill him. In order to save his life, Tony then placed himself into cryogenic sleep. But instead of telling his friends and family that he'd be out of it for a few months in cryogenic sleep, he had everybody in the world, including his best friend Rhodey, believe that he was dead. Rhodey would then take up the mantle of Iron Man and continue saving the world, as this was apparently Tony's final request. This was all despite Rhodey telling Tony beforehand that he never wanted to wear the Iron Man armor again. This would last until Iron Man issue 290, released in January 1993, when Tony came back and was like, "Oh, I'm dead," and Rhodey was, understandably, a little bit angry. This would mess with their friendship for a little while, for, obvious reasons. And so after the two worked together to fight off some robots, Rhodey wanted to get rid of the War Machine armor, but Tony convinced him to keep wearing it. And so Rhodey went off and joined the West Coast Avengers. And so, yeah, that's the origin of War Machine. Tony Stark faked his death, did a little trolling, and severed his friendship with Rhodey for a little while. Civil War. So Civil War is probably one of the most famous comic storylines of all time. Everyone knows how it goes down. Bucky Barnes is framed for the murder of T'Chaka by Alcatraz. This makes him a wanted man, and, oh right, that's the movie. Oops. Anyways, the Civil War storyline begins in Civil War issue 1, released in May 2006, and went on for 7 issues. Only it didn't really actually last 7 issues, as that was only the main storyline. This Civil War saga actually took place over the course of 102 issues, ranging from the main series to issues of the Fantastic Four, Punisher War Journal, The Amazing Spider-Man, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, She-Hulk, Iron Man, New Avengers, Cable and Deadpool, Miss Marvel, Heroes for Hire, Black Panther, etc., along with various new limited series like Fallen Sun, The Death of Captain America, Civil War, Young Avengers and Runaways, and Civil War, Frontline. Pretty much every single hero that was based in the United States took part in this conflict. So what started all this? The Superhuman Registration Act. This was an act put in place to force every single superhero in the United States to register with the government and reveal their identity to the public. This was proposed after the New Warriors moved up and fought the villain Nitro near a school. And when Nitro did his thing and blew up, a lot of people died, including 60 children. And so two sides were formed, the pro-registration side and the anti-registration side. The pro side was led by Tony Stark, while the anti side was led by Steve Rogers, Captain America. The two sides consisted of various different heroes and even villains. The pro side had people like Wonder Man, Mr. Fantastic, Black Widow, Wasp, Sentry, Hellcat, Songbird, Blade, Stature, Green Goblin, Bullseye, Tigra, Takak, Taskmaster, Lady Deathstrike, Bishop, Carol Danvers, She-Hulk, and of course, the clone of Thor, Ragnarok. While the anti-side had Luke Cage, Daredevil, Black Panther, Hercules, Storm, Cyclops, Human Torch, Spider-Man, Invisible Woman, Iron Fist, Punisher, Falcon, Jack Flag, Prowler, Photon, Wolverine, Goliath, Colossus, etc. And when anti-registration heroes were captured, they were put into a prison in another dimension designed by Reed Richards, a Skrull pretending to be Hank Pym, and Tony Stark. At the end of the story, Captain America's side loses, and then Cap is assassinated by Sharon Carter, who was brainwashed at the time. Tony is then put in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. A lot of heroes move out of the United States, and the events of Spider-Man One More Day happen. Basically, the Marvel Universe was never the same. The events of Civil War have been explored in various different alternate continuities, and served as the inspiration for the video game Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 and the film Captain America Civil War. Iron Patriots. There's been a bunch of Iron Patriots in the main Marvel timeline, though there's only been three main ones. The most famous one has to be Norman Osborn. In Dark Avengers issue 1, released in February 2009, Norman was put in charge of a new incarnation of the Avengers, called the Dark Avengers, and I talk a little bit more about them in the second Spider-Man Iceberg, so go check out that video if you want to hear me talk about the Dark Avengers more. But basically, Norman had turned S.H.I.E.L.D. into a group called Hammer, and as the director of Hammer, he started recruiting people to be part of a team of Avengers, sponsored by the US government. This group, for the most part, was made up of former villains, and Norman took up the mantle of Iron Patriot. This was an obvious combination between Iron Man and Captain America. The Iron Patriot armor worn by Norman wasn't as powerful as the normal Iron Man armor, because while Norman was pretty smart, he didn't have the same technical skills as Tony. Also because it was modeled off of an older Iron Man armor. And because of that, Tony was able to hack into the suit and take down Norman. The US government would then put an AI in the Iron Patriot armor, and it became the basis for a bunch of Iron Patriot drones that would be used by S.H.I.E.L.D. Then, in Secret Avengers issue 6, released in July 2013, Rhodey would become the second Iron Patriot, as he was sent in to confront a team of rogue Iron Patriot drones. The drones, recognizing him as War Machine, listened to Rhodey and allowed him to become their leader. This led to Rhodey putting on the armor, which was known as the Iron Patriot Mark II. This was done in the comics purely because in Iron Man 3, Rhodey's War Machine armor was renamed the Iron Patriots. But because this didn't stick in the MCU, in Age of Ultron, Rhodey's next appearance, he was back to being War Machine again. This change in the comics didn't last very long either, as by December 2014, he was back to being War Machine. This armor was pretty much just another variation of War Machine armor anyways, as it had many of the same weapons. And then there's Sharon Carter, who very briefly became Iron Patriot in Captain America issue 23, released in September 2020. She briefly took up the mantle to battle the villain Selene. Since its introduction, the Iron Patriot has appeared in various different media, like Ultimate Spider-Man, LEGO Marvel's Avengers, Marvel Future Fight, Disney Infinity, and in the MCU in both Iron Man 3 and Avengers Endgame. Now you're probably wondering why I said at the very beginning of the century that there were three main Iron Patriots. Who's the third one? Well, I think she deserves her own entry in the iceberg, so I'll come back to her later. Iron Man 2099. So there's two different Iron Man 2099s, and neither of them are canon to each other or actually exist in the main 2099 continuity. The first comes from Iron Man Armored Adventures, the Season 2 episode, Iron Man 2099, where Tony Stark's future grandson, Andros Stark, travels back to the present to prevent the AI Vortex from being created, as this AI would go on to destroy the entire world. So how did he plan on preventing Vortex's creation? Well, because Tony Stark ends up making it, he was going to kill Tony. As for Iron Man 2099's armor abilities, he has roughly the same amount of stuff as your standard Iron Man, with a few exceptions. For example, his armor can teleport and time travel. Also, his suit is run by an AI that's 10 times more advanced than Jarvis. Andros can also control his armor by using his mind. And after his one-off appearance in the show, he would never appear in anything ever again. Then, in Secret Wars 2099, Issue 1, released in May 2015, the world was introduced to Sonny Frisco, the Iron Man of 2099. And like I said earlier, this is not the main 2099 universe. Although Spider-Man 2099 does say that this is his own reality, but that's just not true, because this universe is listed as Earth 23, 2091, while his is listed as Earth 928. Whatever. Anyways, Sonny Frisco became this universe's Iron Man upon being approached by Outlook's CEO, Tyler Stone, to join this universe's Avengers, which consisted of Black Widow, Vision, Hawkeye, Captain America, and Hercules. As part of this Avengers, they'd come into conflict with this universe's Hulk 2099 and his team, the Defenders, which consists of Silver Surfer, Namor, Valkyrie, and Doctor Strange. The existence of the Defenders was kind of a problem, as it was illegal to be a superhero. So the two teams fought for a little bit, and Hulk was eventually captured. But this universe's Captain America felt bad for them, so she helped them escape, causing Sonny to fight her. Strangely, after the 2015 Secret Wars event, somehow Sonny ended up in the main Marvel universe and was then brainwashed by the group The Fist. He was then freed from his brainwashing by Spider-Man 2099, his universe's Captain America, and the main Marvel universe's Elektra. And after being freed, he was actually allowed to live in the main universe. And since his appearance in Spider-Man 2099 issue 25, released in July 2017, he has yet to reappear. Civil War II. So Civil War II is probably one of the most hated Marvel storylines ever. It all centers around an inhuman named Ulysses Kane, who can receive visions of the future. Captain Marvel then comes up with the idea of working with Ulysses to prevent crime and disasters before they happen. But Tony was against this idea, since they didn't really know how Ulysses' powers worked. And the fact that it's even possible to prevent these future crimes and disasters proved that Ulysses' visions were set in stone. Also, there's the whole, punishing people before they commit a crime thing. But Carol didn't listen, and two sides were formed. The pro-arresting people before they commit crimes side, and the anti-arresting people before they commit crimes side. Carol would then lead a team to stop Thanos, after Ulysses saw Thanos doing some bad stuff in a vision. But this little venture resulted in both War Machine dying and She-Hulk ending up in critical condition. After this, Tony was like, alright, I guess I'm just gonna go kidnap Ulysses to study him. But then Ulysses was like, I got a vision that Hulk is gonna kill everyone. So some heroes then went out to confront Hulk, and in order to prevent Bruce from turning into the Hulk, Hawkeye killed him. But then it was revealed that Bruce had told Hawkeye to kill him if he was ever to Hulk out again. And then after a few more shenanigans, the two sides just went ahead. As for who was on whose side, on Iron Man's side, there was both Steve Rogers Captain America and Sam Wilson Captain America, along with Miles Morales, Deadpool, Doctor Strange, Kate Bishop, Miss Marvel, Black Panther, Lady Thor, Luke Cage, Ironheart, Nightcrawler, Miss America, Mystique, etc. While Captain Marvel's side had Agent Venom, Star-Lord, Medusa, Kitty Pryde, Gamora, Thing, Drax, Groot, Rocket Raccoon, Scott Lang, She-Hulk, Iceman, Spider-Man, Jean Grey, Karnak, Spectrum, etc. This conflict came to an end when Captain Marvel nearly killed Iron Man, and Tony was placed into a coma as a result. And then it turns out that this whole event was for nothing, as Ulysses then transcends humanity and joins eternity in a new plane of existence. Like the original Civil War event, this event, at first glance, lasts 9 main issues. But in actuality, it takes place over the course of 139 issues, spanning from comic series like Spider-Man, Mockingbird, Invincible Iron Man, Venom Space Knight, Nova, Captain Marvel, New Avengers, Miss Marvel, A-Force, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Totally Awesome Hulk, Guardians of the Galaxy, Thunderbolts, Deadpool, Power Man and Iron Fist, etc. Its new limited series like Civil War II, X-Men, Civil War II, Kingpin, Civil War II, Choosing Sides, and a Civil War II, Gods of War. As of right now, the only piece of media that's been inspired by Civil War II is the 4-part third season finale of Avengers Assemble. Ironheart. First appearing in Invincible Iron Man issue 7, released in March 2016, Riri Williams, a child prodigy and genius who went on to create her own Iron Man armor. This armor is made of reverse engineered Iron Man parts and other pieces of tech she found lying around her school. And this suit didn't last very long, falling apart on her first outing as a superhero. But then Tony Stark found out about her and gave her the tools that she needed to build a better suit of armor. She'd worked with Tony for a little bit until he was eventually put into a coma after the events of Civil War II. But it turns out that Tony had created an AI version of himself to act as her Jarvis and help her complete the Ironheart armor. And since then, she's been a recurring character in the Marvel Universe. Though her first major outing did get some criticism, as she took over the Iron Man comic series for about a year and a half. She also received some very dumb criticism like, "Why is there a black woman as Iron Man? This is SJW, this is woke." Just absolutely nothing arguments, criticisms, basically nothing but whining. I'm not saying she's an amazing character, I'm just saying if you hate her for being quote unquote woke or SJW, you're dumb. Anyways, in regards to Ironheart's abilities, she has most of the same abilities as Iron Man. She's got repulsor beams, the unibeam, some missiles, she can fly, etc., etc. She's also got the ability to flashbang people and take down people non-lethally with ultrasonic frequencies. Since her introduction in the comics, she's joined the Champions, become Lady Ironheart for a brief period of time, helped build the Wakandan Space Force, pretended to be Kobold's Man, and took part in the Secret Empire event. She's also appeared in various pieces of media, such as Marvel Rising, Marvel Spider-Man, Lego Marvel Superheroes 2, and the MCU. She's even getting her own mini-series later this year, or next year, I'm not too sure when that's coming out. Doctor Doom as Iron Man. In the aftermath of Civil War II, Doctor Doom decided to take up the mantle of Iron Man. You see, prior to this, Doom had a change of heart and decided to befriend Tony Stark, becoming a good guy of sorts, even helping Tony take down Madame Mask after she was possessed by a demon. And so yes, Doctor Doom officially became the new Iron Man in his own miniseries called Infamous Iron Man, which began in October 2016 and lasted until its 12th issue in September 2017. Though even after this miniseries, he continued to be Iron Man until Fantastic Four issue 1, released in August of 2018. As the infamous Iron Man, Doom wore a stolen Model 51 Iron Man armor, which allowed him to fly, gave him enhanced strength, it gave him a cloaking ability, and of course, pulsar blasts. And because it's Doctor Doom, you know, all of its Doom abilities are there, like magic and all that. Armor Wars. Lasting from Iron Man issue 225, released in September of 1987, to Iron Man issue 232, released in March of 1988. The Armor Wars storyline is probably the second most well-known Iron Man storyline. This story saw Iron Man having to face off against his own creations, once his technology was stolen by villains and criminals. Basically, Tony went through a gauntlet of sorts, battling a ton of villains, one after another. He even fights Captain America at one point in the story. Even the Chad Stilt Man showed up, although he was defeated pretty early in the story. The first issue, to be exact, but still, he was there. Armor Wars came to an end when Tony decided to retire from being Iron Man, only to be brought back out of retirement in literally the same issue. Rhodey also pretends to be Electro at one point, which is kind of funny. Anyways, 2 years later, in May of 1990, a sequel to the Armor Wars storyline began called Armor Wars 2. And by sequel, I mean in name only. There's really no connection between the two stories. This story lasted from Iron Man issue 258 to Iron Man issue 266, released in January of 1991. In this story, Tony gets paralyzed and can only walk with the help of an Iron Man armor. But even then, he's practically useless in battle. And so Rhodey takes up the mantle of Iron Man to save the day, fighting against the Mandarin, Fin Fang Fu, and Kirsten DeWitt. Anyways, Armor Wars has been adapted in several pieces of media, from Iron Man the Animated Series, Armored Adventures, Kinda Iron Man 2, the video game Invincible Iron Man, and the upcoming series, or movie now, set in the MCU. Team Tony. So in 1995, Marvel decided to make Tony Stark more hip and epic with the kids. You see, in the Marvel Universe at this time, it was revealed that Tony Stark was a sleeper agent for Kang, and I'll get to that a little bit later. And in order to stop this evil Iron Man, the Avengers looked to their best hope in defeating their former friend. Tony Stark is a teenager from another universe. Well, I say teenager, but he's 19, so he's an adult, but everyone calls him Teen Tony, and 19 has teen in it, so I don't know. The point is, they brought in another Tony Stark who helped battle his evil main universe counterpart. In a battle against evil Tony, Teen Tony had some heart issues, and that somehow made evil Iron Man turn good for a little bit. And so he gave Teen Tony a chest plate that would save his life, at the cost of his own. So now, Teen Tony was the only Tony Stark in the main universe, and took over the Iron Man comic run. Though admittedly not for very long, as this only lasted a few issues before Teen Tony was killed. In 1996, the Onslaught event happened, which resulted in the Avengers and the Fantastic Four all dying. This included Teen Tony, but they were all reborn in a new universe called Counter-Earth. No, not that Counter-Earth. This was a pocket dimension created by Franklin Richards, and this was all part of an event called Heroes Reborn. Heroes Reborn lasted for around 40 issues, and when the event ended in 1997, all of the heroes returned to the main Marvel universe, and Tony Stark was now an adult. So what happened there? Well, it turns out that when evil Tony Stark died, he didn't actually die, but instead was transported further in the timeline with his memories and all of Teen Tony's memories merged into one entity. This was done by Franklin Richards, but it wasn't revealed until 2001. So in that 4 years between 1997 and 2001, people were just kind of confused as to why he was an adult again. So basically, the Iron Man in the comics right now is a combination between the original Iron Man and Teenage Tony, with their memories just combined. This entire situation with Teen Tony, which was called the Crossing Event, actually caused longtime Iron Man writer Len Kaminsky to leave the series, stating, "The Crossing was the reason I quit Iron Man. Editorial was utterly determined to ram it through, and once I saw no amount of reason would deter them, I had to walk away, rather than end up being remembered as the guy who made Iron Man suck." The Chinese Iron Man 3 cut. So when Iron Man 3 came out, if you saw the film in China, you would see an exclusive version of the film with almost 4 minutes of additional scenes. So now you're probably wondering, why did Disney do this? You see, at the time, China had a quota to restrict the amount of Hollywood films released in the country every year. So in order to guarantee that Iron Man 3 would be released there, Marvel filmed bonus scenes featuring high-profile Chinese actors to appease the Chinese government. Also, this cut of the film would begin with an ad for a Chinese milk brand. This was done because around that time, a major dairy company in China had to recall all of their baby formula due to mercury poisoning. This led to people in China being cautious about drinking milk products. So, did all these changes make the film profitable in China? Kinda, but not really. There's a reason why Marvel and Disney never did this again. Chinese audiences aren't stupid. They quickly figured out that the film's extra scenes were just to appease their government. Also, Chinese trailers for the film showed off most of the scenes with the famous Chinese actors, leading many to think that they would be main characters in the film. In reality, one was a minor character, and the other one didn't even play a character with a name. But despite all of this, it still made a good amount of money in China, because Marvel movies usually do make a lot of money in China. Iron Man 2020. So in January 2020, Marvel began an event called Iron Man 2020, in which Tony had convinced himself that he was actually an AI and that his body had been grown to host a brain filled with a digital copy of his mind. Basically, Tony Stark thought he was a synth. Tony's brother, Arno Stark, used this recent development to take all of Tony's assets, which included Iron Man. And with all of Tony's tech and money, Arno decided to take down all AI and robots, as he believed a giant monster was coming to Earth and would assimilate all AI and organic life. Tony would then join an AI army to oppose his brother. He took the name Mark I, and Arno took the name of Iron Man, and the two battled a couple times, until eventually the giant monster arrived on Earth. And it wasn't real. It turns out there was no giant monster. Instead, that was an illusion caused by a disease that Arno Stark had. Tony then had Arno put into a new suit of armor he made, called the Virtual Armor, or the Model 68, which allowed Arno to live out his dream of taking out the monster he called the Extinction Entity. And Tony just left him there. As of right now, Arno is still living in that simulation. As for the Iron Man armor worn by Arno, that was the Model 67, and it was pretty interesting. It's got all the standard Iron Man abilities, although various parts of the armor can actually retract to reveal secret repulsor ports, so he's got a whole bunch of secret weapons. Now the story is pretty interesting and weird, but this wasn't the first time that Arno Stark wore an Iron Man armor that looked like that. In Machine Man Issue 2, released in July of 1984, the world was introduced to an alternate universe Arno Stark. He's from Earth 8410, and instead of being Tony Stark's brother, in this universe, Tony was his great uncle. Although it's also mentioned that Tony is just his uncle, not his great uncle, but then it's also been said that Tony's his first cousin. I don't know, the point is he's related to him. Anyways, he took over Stark Industries after Tony Stark died, and eventually became Iron Man. But instead of being your standard superhero, Arno became a mercenary for a little while, before eventually becoming a superhero. His armor is, for the most part, pretty similar to your standard Iron Man armor, with some big changes, like having a tractor beam, a handgun, a controllable flying blade, and finger lasers. Side note, Tony Stark also didn't die in this universe. He just went into hiding or something like that, and wants to guide Arno. Arno Stark as Iron Man 2020 has surprisingly appeared in some pieces of media, like the Superhero Squad online game, LEGO Marvel Superheroes 2, and even Avengers Assemble. Tony Stark joins the Guardians of the Galaxy. In Guardians of the Galaxy issue 0.1, released in February 2013, Iron Man joins the Guardians of the Galaxy after Star-Lord offers a spot on the team. Tony would chill the Guardians for a little bit of time, doing missions with the team and eventually even banging Gamora. While part of the Guardians, he wore his Model 45 armor, also known as the Deep Space Armor. This armor allowed Tony to survive in space for lengthy periods of time, travel upon tech, and allowed Tony to activate and control other Iron Man suits, light years away. However, he didn't stay with the team for very long. In fact, by Guardians of the Galaxy issue 11, Not Now, released in January 2014, Tony was already off the team, lasting less than a year. He also stole some tech from Rocket, but at the same time, he also sends Agent Venom to the Guardians as their newest member. Though he didn't do this out of the kindness of his heart, it was because he felt the team needed somebody who spent most of their life on Earth on the team. It's pretty obvious that Tony's few adventures with the Guardians was just to get the comic sales up, to get people more interested in both that comic and in the 2014 Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Ready your mark. That's Iron Man on Disney XD. Good evening, Mrs. Stock. What? Oh man, it's just suit me up. As you wish, sir. Alright. Never mind, I'm good. Enter for a chance to win Iron Man's gadgets at DrPepper.com. Blast off. Now that's Iron Man right here on Disney XD. The Model 52. First appearing in All New, All Different Adventures, Issue 1, released in November 2015, this is the Hulkbuster armor that turns into a flying car that I briefly mentioned at the very beginning of the video. For the most part, it's your standard Hulkbuster armor, besides the whole, transforming into a flying car thing. But what also makes this armor unique is that it's one of the rare cases of the comics adapting something from the films. As you've probably figured out by now, this Hulkbuster design is based on the Hulkbuster featured in the film Age of Ultron, though sadly the one in the film doesn't turn to a car. Video game guest appearances. Despite there not really being a ton of Iron Man solo games out there, Iron Man has actually made guest appearances in a few video games where he's not the focus. I'm also not counting giant crossover games like Marvel Ultimate Alliance or Marvel vs. Capcom. He's an unlockable character in X-Men Legends 2, Rise of Apocalypse. He's unlocked by gathering 4 different homing beacons in each of the game's acts. By getting all these homing beacons, you can then access secret areas to collect his armor. And once you get all 4 pieces of armor, you unlock him. There's even an alternate skate for him that turns him into War Machine. Iron Man also makes a non-playable appearance in, of all things, the 2005 Punisher game, where the Yakuza group, the Eternal Sun, try to steal one of his Iron Man suits. And so the Punisher guns down a bunch of these dudes at Stark Towers. Also, breaking my rule a little bit here, but Iron Man also appears in Avengers in Galactic School.
Travel Town. Playing now.
I have a W-2 and a 1099, and I spoke with a TurboTax expert who helped me file with confidence. Doing these grinds is hard, but filing with TurboTax is easy.
File your taxes with expert help, plus a final review at no extra charge. 100% accuracy guaranteed.
An arcade game from 1995, and for whatever reason, Iron Man wasn't included as a main fighter, but instead as an assist character. Iron Shogun. So I'm writing this entry on April 12th, 2023, and this comic doesn't come out until May 10th, 2023, so I can't go into detail about any of the comic's plots because it's not out yet. Maybe it'll be out when this video's done. I don't know. Anyways, in Iron Man issue 3, released in May 2023, Tony Stark dons a new set of armor called the Iron Shogun armor and wields two different plasma katanas. And in this story, he sets out on a mission in the 1990s to do something for his dead mom that he failed to save the life of. Not really much else I'm going to say here. If you're interested in the Iron Shogun, go check out the comic on May 10th. Sorcerer Supreme. In What If, issue 113, released in August of 1998, a story was told in which Tony Stark became the Sorcerer Supreme. In this universe, traveled to Tibet with Stephen Strange to meet with the Ancient One in order for him to fix Strange's hands. This was after Strange had his hands permanently damaged in a car crash while Tony was driving. While in Tibet, Tony figured out that Baron Mordo was doing some pretty bad stuff, and so he trained under the Ancient One in order to use magic to defeat Mordo. And once he did, the Ancient One declared that he was the Sorcerer Supreme. And as the Sorcerer Supreme, he created an armor that featured elements of both the Iron Man armor and Doctor Strange's gear. Eventually, Tony would be confronted by Dormammu and his minions. It would then be revealed that Dormammu had healed Strange's hands in exchange for Strange pledging loyalty to him. Though Clea would eventually convince Strange to betray Dormammu and help Tony. And so Dormammu was defeated, and Tony Stark continued to be the Sorcerer Supreme, while Strange and Clea moved into the Dark Dimension in order to rule it. This would be the only time that Tony Stark would become the Sorcerer Supreme, though. An all-new X-Men annual released in December of 2014. He's appeared a handful of times since, but he's not the same Sorcerer Supreme Tony from What If. The original Whiplash. So there's a few Whiplashes in the main Marvel continuity. There was one in the Thunderbolts, but she didn't really do anything and appeared only twice, and yet somehow made an appearance in Wolverine and the X-Men. Then there was another Whiplash, who first appeared in Big Hero 6, issue 1, released in September 2008, and didn't really do anything. And then there's probably the most famous Whiplash, Ivan Vanko. But what some Iron Man fans may not realize is that Ivan Vanko isn't a very old character. He's not like super new, but he first appeared in Iron Man vs. Whiplash issue 1, released in December of 2009. This was the hype of Iron Man 2, which came out in April 2010, as that film had Ivan Vanko's Whiplash as its main villain. And despite him being the most well-known Whiplash, he's not the first one, or even the one who has the most appearances. That would be Mark Scaloni, who first appeared in Tales of Suspense issue 97, released in October 1967. Mark worked for Stark International and was pretty smart, having a degree in engineering. However, he became a criminal and later a supervillain after befriending some pretty bad dudes, who introduced him to the world of developing weapons for the criminal organization, the Magia. This would eventually lead him into conflict with Iron Man, and after their first battle, he became a regular opponent for the Armored Avenger. That was until he decided to go legit after being humiliated by Iron Man. But because of his criminal record, nobody wanted to hire him, and his own family even disowned him. So he fell back into crime, and eventually started going by the name Backlash, but would return to being called Whiplash. As mentioned earlier in the video, Whiplash would eventually meet his end at the hands of Iron Man's sentient armor, who beat him to death and then dropped his body into a river. As for Whiplash's abilities, he wore a battle suit capable of stopping small arm fire, electric cybernetic whips that could deflect bullets and pierce steel, and he also had various little gadgets, like discs that could generate an artificial gravity field. Mark's incarnation of Whiplash has appeared in a variety of different media, ranging from Iron Man the Animated Series, Marvel Disc Wars The Avengers, Armored Adventures, Iron Man the video game, and even the MCU. Although his name was changed to Marcus Scarloni, he's not even referred to as Whiplash or Backlash in the single Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode he appears in. Natasha Stark. Gender swapping characters between alternate universes is nothing new. For example, there's been plenty of alternate universes where Batman's been a woman, or Spider-Man's been a woman, and Iron Man is no different. Probably the most well-known female Tony Stark is Natasha Stark from Earth 3490, first and only appearing in Dark Reign Fantastic Four issue 2, released in April 2009. Natasha has barely any story to her. All we know about her is that she's Iron Woman and married Captain America. This romantic relationship with him somehow prevented the entirety of Civil War from happening. No, really, because they were so in love, they weren't very aggressive about their beliefs. And so that universe's Reed Richards completed the Superhero registration program without a single fight. So with barely any story, it only appearing in one comic, why is she well known? Well, it's because it's an alternate universe Iron Man marrying Captain America, and it's because of that there's probably been like a million different like nerd articles, like 10 Marvel ships that are actually canon, or something like that. Cancelled Avalanche Studios game. For around 2 years, the game studio Avalanche Studios, known for their work on the Just Cause series, the 2015 Mad Max game, and Rage 2, were working on an Iron Man video game. This was revealed by one of Avalanche Studios' founders, Christopher Sundberg, in August of 2022. Not much is known about this cancelled Iron Man game, outside of its starting development in 2012, and it was cancelled due to a variety of reasons. One of the main reasons being that Disney had shortened the development time of the game by a year, which increased the budget of the game because Avalanche Studios would need to hire around 80 more people to finish the game in that short period of time. And when the game would be released, the company didn't know where they'd send those 80 new workers. As for the game's gameplay, all we know about it is that it would have been open world. It would have had an emphasis on melee combat. Exo-Man. So at least once a year, some tweet or picture or whatever will come out with like the caption, "Wow, look at these old Marvel movies. Don't the characters look super weird and old?" And it'll be photos of Hulk and Thor from the 70s Hulk show, a picture of either the 1990 Captain film or the 1979 film, and then there's also like an Iron Man example to usually give. But this photo is not of Iron Man. This wasn't even a Marvel production. These are screenshots from the 1977 made-for-TV film Exo-Man, which was about Professor Nicholas Conrad, who's paralyzed after being attacked by the mob. And so, he creates a suit of armor to allow him to walk and fight crime. It was intended to be a pilot for a TV series, but the show never ended up happening, apparently because of the lack of merchandising potential. So don't be fooled by these articles or like pictures or whatnot. This is not an Iron Man film or TV show. It is a superhero film from the 1970s, but it's not an Iron Man film. A lot of medieval Iron Men. So because Iron Man armor, there's been plenty of alternate universe versions of him that have Tony being Iron Man in medieval times. Here's just a few of them. First, we have Tony Stark from Earth 398, who first appeared in Avengers.
We're putting together the perfect kids movie night. Shipt delivers all the ingredients you need, and being a busy mom, I love the convenience of Shipt and their same-day delivery. These mini English pizzas are so easy to make, and they're great for kiddos to customize their own toppings. No movie night is complete without candy and popcorn, but I had to add some veggies in there, pretzels, chicken strips, and our mini pizzas. It's the best movie night without leaving the house.
Issue 2, released in January of 1998. In this universe, he's known as the Iron Knight. This reality was actually a reality warp created by Morgan Le Fay, with the heroes from the main Marvel universe possessing the bodies of their medieval counterparts. Although they didn't know they were possessing people, and they thought that they were actually the people they were possessing. It's weird. If Morgan Le Fay was defeated by the Scarlet Witch, all of the heroes returned to their normal universe. Next we have Tony Stark from Earth 96433, First appeared in Dark Reign Fantastic Four Issue 2, released in April of 2009. Not much is known about him, outside of him starting a revolution against their queen, who's their universe's Sue Storm, and the Captain of the Guard, who's this universe's Captain America. Then there's Tony Stark of Earth 82-633. In this universe, Tony lived his life pretty much the same as his main Marvel Universe counterpart. That is, up until Iron Man issue 150, released in June 1981. You see, in the main universe, Iron Man and Doctor Doom traveled back in time to Camelot, but both of them returned to the present day by the end of the story. However, in What If issue 33, released in March 1982, Doom leaves Tony behind in Camelot, and so Tony is forced to live the rest of his life in medieval times. While there, King Arthur knighted Tony, and he was allowed to be part of the Round Table. Later, Mordred killed King Arthur, and in King Arthur's dying breath, he crowned Tony as the new King of Camelot. And finally, there's Shellhead, who first appeared in Avengers Fairy Tales issue 1, released in March 2008. I'm really only including Shellhead here for completionist sake, because I don't really think he counts as an alternate universe version of Tony Stark. Because, he, on paper, is. However, by the end of the story, it's revealed that this whole, comic series was just a story the main universe of Scarlet Witch is telling. It's basically her version of Peter Pan, with several Marvel characters swapped out for Peter Pan characters. And Shellhead was this universe's Iron Man as part of the Lost Boys. Mr. Doll, first appearing in Tales of Suspense, issue 48, released in September of 1963, Nathan Dolly was a pretty messed up dude who traveled to Africa to learn magic from a witch doctor. There, he discovered a voodoo doll that could rapidly change its shape. He stole it and became the villain, Mr. Doll. He returned to the United States and began to blackmail businessmen into giving him their money, since he could just torture or kill them using the voodoo doll. However, he ended up messing with the wrong person, as one of his victims was a business associate with Tony Stark. The guy started acting pretty weird after being blackmailed by Mr. Doll. This caused Tony to investigate. He eventually finds Mr. Doll and confronts him, but would be forced to flee. He would then face off against Mr. Doll again when he tried to extort Stark Industries. And during this encounter, Tony figured out a way to defeat him. In their third fight, Tony used a beam to change the voodoo doll's appearance to look like Mr. Doll. This hurt Doll Dude pretty badly, and he was arrested. Years later, he'd show back up to fight Spider-Woman, this time going by the name Brothers Grimm. He had his mind transferred into two life-size mannequins. These were Brothers Grimm. So his wife attempted to figure out a way to free her husband. She, along with Brothers Grimm, attempted to transfer Nathan's mind into a man named Jerry Hunt by doing something called ritual. And during this ritual, while Nathan's soul was traveling to Jerry